What's up and welcome everybody. Josh the RV Nerd of Bish's RV here on a beautiful day. And if you can believe it, the year at the time this comes out is basically officially half over. So where does that put us in the scheme of things in the RV industry? I've got a bunch of different stats, some different stories for you, some pretty crazy things potentially kind of happening, shaking things up down the line. And as always, if you appreciate what we're doing here for you, hit that subscribe button if you're new with us. Know that we're always going to do our best to keep you informed on all the goings on of the industry. Like the video if you're a returning member of the RV Nerd Herd. And if you find value in this, if you appreciate what we're doing here, hit that share button, pump it out to whatever your favorite little social group is right there, and help spread the message to keep everybody in the loop as to what's going on. Let's get started. First up, if you think you could do a better job than the RV manufacturers that have been out there, this might be your time to make that happen. The Rev Group, who's the parent company over Lance RV, has announced that they are selling the Lance camper division. Lance was founded back in 1965, I believe, by a fellow named Jack, if I'm not mistaken. In 2018, at the time they did only truck campers. In 2018, they expanded into more conventional towables like travel trailers. And as recently as 2022, they actually opened a production facility in Decatur, Indiana, to help kind of bridge the eastern-western gap a little bit. And I tell you what, if you folks are following RV Miles, you know that Jason Epperson is desperate for somebody to pool some beer money together with him and make this happen. I think he would love to have a chance at driving this thing right here. But it is interesting to see. Rev Group has actually announced pretty good second quarter stats and everything, but they have found that their Lance Camper Towable division has underperformed for their expectations. So basically, they're offloading it out of their portfolio, going back to the thing that got them to the dance, and letting somebody else take it over. It'll be really interesting to see what comes of Lance down the line. We're gonna, by the way, I'm not wearing the glasses because I'm trying to be Joe Cool. It's just beautiful and bright out here, and I don't feel like going any blinder than I already am. Anyway, we're gonna talk a lot about the current state of the RV market out there, but something I stumbled into here was this release that Winnebago put out. I think it was in some kind of interview, where they're being, I think, refreshingly realistic about the state of things. Winnebago has just overtly said, hey, basically the sentiment we're getting from our dealers is being very, very cautious right now. And what they're really kind of finding and proving is that they're making some smart moves and they're putting in the work to find success in some key areas. Like with the, for those who didn't know, Grand Design is part of the Winnebago banner. With the introduction and initial success here of the Lineage series, they've found some growth in some key areas where they were struggling, which is really important for Winnebago that has a massive motorized background. Which is a really challenging segment to be in right now. But also things like the new Winnebago Thrive travel trailer series they put out. I put my first video out on one recently. It's just an opinion, but I personally feel it's the best towable that Winnebago has innovated basically and produced in the last 6, 8, almost 10 years, you know. It's one of the best things they've put out in terms of features versus value. The fit and finish felt good. Time will certainly tell if they live up to the snuff. But they're realizing, like a lot of other brands, like Newmar's made some really similar smart decisions on their motorized offerings, that it's going to be really the key players who are actually executing better and making a better product with a better value that are going to be successful. But they also recognize that they have a couple mountains to climb, that they have something to prove to a lot of people. They're again realizing in the actual Winnebago brand towables with the Thrive series, they've got to produce something that has more than just a cool Winnebago nameplate on it, and I think that they're doing that. They're also realizing over in their Grand Design divisions, they may have a lot of work for a lot of people to rebuild some trust that they may have lost in key areas. And they are doing a lot of work behind the scenes, a lot of stuff that isn't published yet, that I think there's always going to be a lot of people that are going to feel it's too little too late. And I'm not here to argue with that. I'm not here to change that. But I have seen things that they're doing, and I think that they're a group that in the next 3 to 5 years you want to keep an eye on. And they're maybe going to be that next pushing, driving force in the industry here. But again, time will tell with all this stuff, but it was, what I took away from this at the end of the day, sorry I get off on these tangents, is it was just refreshing to finally hear somebody in the industry just be realistic about the marketplace and not just be all sunshine and rainbows, and for them to go, hey, you know what? This is where we're at, and we got to be better if we want to continue. It's just really nice to finally see that come in from an RV manufacturer. And kind of in that spirit, I've always tried to just be as candid and real about the state of things as possible. And just hard numbers, hard facts. Industry sales continue to slide down, which is a trend that has been continuing since about 2023. The most current year-to-date stats, there have been a little over 105,000 new RVs registered, meaning actually purchased and sold, not shipments, not wholesale, but actual sales and registrations, which is down almost 8%, I think 7.6%. Versus last year, which was down from the year before that. The thing is, and if you watch my videos, I've discussed this greatly, we're in a phase where we had robbed from Peter to pay Paul, and now we're paying the piper, basically. A lot of people who would have been shopping and purchasing currently already made a purchase a year or two or three ago, and because costs have gone up, interest rates have gone up, and trade values are not awesome currently, there's a lot of people who just are not back in the RV market segment. But if you look at actual current sales, yes, things are absolutely down significantly from 2-3 years ago. But that was that almost artificially infused robbing Peter to pay Paul period. If you actually look at the stats, we've essentially returned to 2017, 2018 numbers. And it's really kind of funny. Back then, dealers thought everything was just going great, but there were still some different market segments there. There was a little more economic confidence, consistency. Interest rates were certainly lower, and I think that things were flowing more smoothly and more easily with better margins for everybody all the way around and lower price tags on average for consumers. So the average total number of sales are kind of there, but what is the juice that you're getting from that squeeze is just not as good as it used to be, and that's a lot of the pressure the industry's feeling today. But on that note, who is winning? If we look at pure sales volume, that's the only metric that we're looking at here. In towables, Forest River continues to kind of lead that charge, followed very closely by Thor, and in a distant third, Winnebago, with the vast majority of that actually being represented by Grand Design. Most of the Winnebago towable stats that you'll see will be almost exclusively Grand Design. Similarly, in fifth wheels, you see a little bit of a flip. Thor has continued to maintain their overall volume advantage in fifth wheels, with Forest River right behind them, and then again, Winnebago basically almost completely purely Grand Design coming in third there. The pop-up market, Forest River's the number one volume builder right there, but I think that's mostly Rockwood. There might be a little bit of that Coachman Clippery kind of stuff in there. I don't even know how much of that's even happening anymore. But after that is A-Liner, and then Purple Line LLC, which I'm sure very few people have heard of, which really should give you a good indication of the fact that the pop-up market is almost gone. There's nearly nobody playing in that market anymore, because if you look at the cost anymore of a pop-up, you can almost, in some cases, you can quite literally get a fully enclosed travel trailer for the same price or so darn close that it almost feels silly not to go that route. So pop-ups are one of those things that so many of us have a lot of cool, fun memories camping as a kid, and it was like, a lot of people say it's a lot closer to real camping, not this RV glamping thing, and I get that, but it doesn't seem like the consumer market's going to be changing on that until probably pricing becomes more affordable on those. Over in motorized, basically Class A, Class C, Class B, Thor is just tens across the board. They're number one in every single motorized category. In Class A and C, Forest River is representing pretty well. Newmar obviously representing very well in the Class A series. Winnebago continues to do very well in the Class Cs. But in the Class B segment, that's where Winnebago has actually found they've pulled ahead of Forest River overall in the motorized segment. So there's all these different brands that always claim they're the best and number one. By the just pure numbers volume, that's who's stacking up against who right now. And again, it was actually kind of cool to see more of the industry groups being more realistic, I think, and finally maybe more publicly acknowledging the reality that I think all of us can already see when we look out the window. RVIA has recently revised their annual forecast for the year, and basically the first half of the year, more RVs were shipped than were expected. I think a lot of that, though, was based on the fact that with a lot of potential economic international uncertainty, aka a lot of the whole tariff talk out there, a lot of dealer groups, especially a lot of Canadian groups, pre-purchased and loaded up on inventory that would have been made and built and shipped before any of that could or maybe would have taken place to keep themselves protected and or insulated from that. But as a result, the phase that we're in right now is we're seeing a slower rollout of the new like 26s, because essentially with dealers having pretty full inventories, like you look behind me, we've got a full lot, which we're not overflowing. We actually still have less in stock than we've had in previous years, but we have full shelves for the most part. And most dealers are basically replacing things as they sell them, not making a lot of predictive big bulk proactive orders. And with the current, it seems like every day the conversation changes on import costs and taxes and everything else. That's probably going to remain that cautious status quo, at least for the remainder of this year. So with that, I wanted to talk a little bit on what to expect in terms of what you're going to see from the 26 rollouts, and perhaps how you could maybe use some of this to your advantage, because that's the goal with these videos, to put you in the best position possible to know what's going around so that you can make a more educated decision. You might have noticed I've started to have some 2026 footage rolling out through the channel. I still have a little bit of 2025 stuff to kind of trickle through at this point that I had already pre-recorded for you. But I've been spending the last 6 weeks absolutely pounding the pavement, driving back and forth almost every single day to Elkhart County, Indiana, to visit the factories, to get my hands on the camera on anything I can, to get you all the footage that I can as quickly as possible. And what I'm finding here is that not every group was ready to make the 2026 transition. So RVIA puts these guidelines. They are technically voluntary guidelines, but they're very, manufacturers do typically try to follow suit with this, where basically June 1st to June 31st is when the 26 updates were suggested to be in place. There were a couple groups that largely for that June production period had most of their stuff in order. Like I've noticed Keystone seems to kind of be up to date on stuff. Jayco seems like they were kind of pretty much on time, ahead of the curve. There's always a few other little odds and ends, but for the most part, they were on top of things. But not every group has had those ducks in a row for whatever reason. There have been a few divisions I've talked to, like we have all of our 26 plans in place, but we have a lot of remaining pieces and parts in stock that we have to burn through. So there's also been a couple groups that say we have our plans in place, but sometimes due to limited manpower at the production facilities, like engineering and design and prototyping and testing, they haven't been able to get to a point where they feel confident changing the product yet. And that's probably by about September is when we will have everybody pretty much on a full 26 rotation. But you might see some early 26 stuff that is still essentially identical to 2025 product out there, or in a sort of transitional morphing state as it makes its way up to being a total 2026 product. So what can you do with this information? It potentially, in certain scenarios, could put you in position to leverage stronger trade values. If Dealers want the newest stuff in stock always, because that puts us typically at the greatest advantage position where the other guy had the new thing. Well, we want the new thing so that we always have the new updates. Well, when we have full inventories, and a lot of dealers do, and we're replacing things as they sell, dealerships will provide you a greater incentive in various forms to purchase that still maybe new in stock 24, or there's a lot of new in stock 25s that are now holdovers because the 2026 models are the new thing. The thing there is, if you're shopping a brand that maybe hasn't applied those new updates yet, or if you look at the new updates and it looks like just a case of brand new look, same great taste, you could use that information to maybe purchase the already in stock 25, and whether it's a better price tag on the 25 or a greater value on your trade, whether the money comes off the top or bottom, it still comes off, it doesn't matter. That might put you in a position, especially folks who have just wanted to trade out but couldn't because they bought at that COVID price and then the interest rate's up, and like, if you feel like you've been buried in a trade, you might find some certain scenarios where you could offset enough of that to maybe make the shift. I'm not ever encouraging anyone to dive in without checking the numbers, but if you looked 6 months ago and the numbers didn't work, it might not hurt to look again. And I don't care if you're shopping from Bish's, it just, the worst that happens is you say no thanks and you keep your thing. But you might find you might be in a spot to swap them out. And don't be surprised in these update videos if I start talking more and more about the used RV market segments right now. I've got a couple theories kind of percolating on this. I'll be surprised if some of this doesn't come to pass. So first of all, one of the first things I always want to say is that the used market hinges upon the new market. So where the new market goes, the used market tends to follow. That uncertainty has kind of spilled over. When we have economic unsurety in the new RV market, that will kind of determine the ceiling limit of values on the used RV market. And what we're seeing right now is a lot of dealers, I think, took in a lot of trades during RV show season. And then around June, when the new 2026 stuff came out, a lot of dealers had a bunch of used RVs sitting on their lot, and they wanted to free up space and dollars to get the new 26s coming in. And I'm seeing a lot of dealers push a higher volume of RVs to auction, basically, to the wholesale auction blocks, because there are more than 13% more towable RVs coming across those blocks right now than we had seen in previous months. Motorized seems to be pretty flat overall. Now, on top of that, new RV pricing is with the international economic things, it is probably going to creep up. But overall, new RV pricing is doing what it can to kind of hold steady, because the market's well aware that if the pricing goes up 20% on these things, nobody's going to be buying them, obviously. But as a result, that has really kind of caused a bit of a stabilization that is somewhat market factor related and somewhat seasonal factor related in the used RV market. That is a very lengthy way of me saying used RV pricing is probably going to remain pretty flat, at least through the remainder of the camping season, obviously tapering off when the chilly weather season kind of starts coming in. But through the remainder of the nationwide sunshine season here, used pricing is probably going to stay pretty flat. But again, where you can come out ahead sometimes by comparison is when you find that aged in stock RV. Those are the units that dealers are wanting more, just say desperately, basically, to get rid of, whether that means giving you a discount on the price tag or offering you more for your trade. The numbers game goes either way, but at the end of the result, that's where the opportunities will lie right now. Now, everything I'm about to say in this next little chapter right here is purely my nerdy working theory, my little Nerdstradamus crystal ball over here. I've been in this for about 16 years now. Historically, this industry, like before my time in this industry, it ran on roughly a 3 to 5 year cycle where it would the industry would sort of contract. The used RVs and the entry-level new RVs would take hold as like the real driving force, and then it would become the mid-level RVs and then the premium stuff, and then it would taper back down and it would cycle. Since I started in January of 2009, the industry has mostly only gone one way, and we are, for the first time that I've ever personally seen, kind of cycling back down. I have kind of a working theory that the time where the used RV market is going to really be the pillar of stability that supports this industry is on its way here. It's almost here. And I say that because, I mean, just flat saying to say it in a flowery fashion, consumer sentiment is down in the industry right now. Like, I think that's literally the softest way that we could say it. So many people have become very disheartened, disenfranchised with the state of the industry, the quality of the product that has come out. That's just that's a hard fact. That's a hard reality. The other thing here is with interest rates up, cost vectors are really a challenge right now. Used RVs tend to represent a price tag that allows you to minimize the fear and risk in a lot of an RV purchase. Now, not only is it a more accessible budget, one of the things I recommend, I've got a video out there giving what I call 8 tips for first-time buyers. One of the things I recommend first is like rent or borrow an RV first, but make your first RV purchase a used RV purchase to help learn the ropes and maybe swap into or out of, it's easier in, easier out. But I think we're entering a market segment where on almost pricing vectors alone, a lot of people are going to start hawking the used RV market. Now that could mean, if there's a run on the used RVs, that could mean trade values creep up a little bit, but the thing is that'll be relative to the market. When you're looking at an age depreciating asset, saying that trade values creep up is proportionate. So it's not like if your RV is worth 20 grand today, it's going to be worth 24 grand 3 years from now. That's not going to happen. But it might keep closer to its current value than it otherwise would have decayed. And I think that you're going to see probably some like used RV buying events from some major RV dealer groups where they're going to shift a big chunk of their money away from new RV manufacturer purchasing and create a bigger piece of their pie for their used RV budget allowance, essentially. I think over the next year or two, you're going to watch a shift in that needle right there. I could be totally wrong, but I got this feeling that, like, just my ears on the ground here, that time is kind of coming. And then after that, you'll see the entry-level new stuff take off, and then the mid-grade, then your real premium stuff cycle back through again. There's always going to be successful pockets, but I think that trend is about to hit us. And speaking of interest rates, expect no changes in the foreseeable future. Last year, we saw 3 drops in the federal key rate, which does not directly affect RV loan interest rates. It's an indirect passive effect right there. But effectively, the feds have essentially said, man, with everything that's going on in all these countries, jockeying on all these different economic things, we're not sure what's happening, so we're just going to hold things tight right where they're at right now. And from what I gather, talking to our local and national finance managers internally here at the company, we're not expecting to see RV interest rates change a whole lot more. I would have rather told you, hey, they're going to go down. I'd rather give you that awesome news. But that is what we are seeing. We want to relay that real expectation so you can make real plans with real information on your potential purchase or not purchase. Looking forward in the RV marketplace a little bit, back in 2024, Thor created a fully electric Class A motorhome. And the idea was kind of just to test an experiment thing. And what they discovered is what I think anybody would have expected. The range of this thing is severely a problem. Well, they kind of partnered up with Harbinger Motors, and they've created effectively a hybrid electric gas motorhome. It's essentially still an electric motorhome, but it has the onboard generator you could fire up to charge the battery while you're driving. Now this sounds a little bit silly. You're thinking, why wouldn't you just buy a gas motorhome then? The thing is, the distance you're getting per gallon is much greater than just a conventional gas motorhome. Now your range over time is still far more limited, but these exclusively electric motorhomes, we're only looking at like 150, 200 miles in some cases, like not enough, you know. Now it's not unusual on a long RV vacation, a long drive, that people will leapfrog. They'll spend a part of the day driving, they'll pull into some kind of site, they'll stay overnight or stay a day or two, and then they'll leave from there. This new hybrid concept is allowing about a 500-mile range. Obviously, there's different factors that could shorten that, but that's starting to become a more realistic number where maybe someone drives for the majority of the day, they find a place they pull into, you use the park power to recharge the batteries overnight, or theoretically, you might be able to use the generator to kind of charge overnight, and then you continue the next frog hop leg of this tomorrow. Now, this is obviously still just, there's only one of these they've made. It's still a theoretical concept in question. But I wanted to throw this out there because that's starting to kind of address some of the major problems with the electrification of a motorized RV. And I'm sort of curious to ask what you think the possibility of this becoming a functional reality would be. Is it like, okay, we're starting to become plausible, or no, this is still just way stupid? And we are basically, as this releases, 4th of July week, expect heavy travel, heavy traffic out there, whether you're on the road or in the air. There's expected over 72 million Americans will be traveling for the holiday, 50 miles or more, basically, whether it's to go see family or to go do things and do vacations. And that's about 2 million more than last year, with especially air traffic being up significantly from what it was before. So if you are traveling for the holidays, budget some extra travel time. Make sure you have extra snacks and water for potential backups on the road, because inevitably you're going to be going down the road and it's either going to, you're going to hit a standstill from traffic accident on the highway, or you hit one of those things where it's just for some reason we only go 10 miles an hour, and then you get up there and there's nothing, and now everyone's going 70 again. But yeah, expect a lot of travel this holiday week. And something I'm personally kind of glad to see, I know that this is going to be a little bit of a hot take for some people, but it seems like there continues to be a greater pushback on these late cancellations or these no-shows. And basically, a lot of people were starting to adopt this policy where they would book multiple weekends or weeks, and then right before it was time to go, they'd check the weather report, decide which of the 2 or 3 weeks they booked, and then just cancel the others last minute. So anyone who was trying to make reservations often had difficulty, but if you actually got to the park, you found a lot of open sites because of these late cancellations. This is not a problem that plagued the RV industry for the majority of the history of the RV industry. It's been more of a recent phenomenon since about 2020 pandemic period, when the industry went from 8 million registered owners to like 15.5 or whatever. But the more and more park owners, property owners, campground owners, etc., have started adopting, late cancellation policies. And even KOA, who was renowned for having one of the softest cancellation policies, has recently kind of revised their cancellation thing. Previously, I think it was as long as it was any time before 24 hours of your booking. I think you had to pay a $10 admin fee just to have somebody clickety-clack the keyboard to undo that. And they've gone to a little bit more of a progressive process here. But when I look at this, I don't see anything that I think is unrealistic. And I think the only goal of this truly is to, like, if you're gonna reserve a site and cause that facility to, not be able to make their income on that site if you don't show up, I don't think this is an unrealistic policy myself. I think that if any of us watching this were campground owners, I think that we would probably look at it and say, from your angle, that would be pretty realistic. There's certainly going to be some people, sometimes things happen, kid gets sick or whatever, at the last minute, and you might have to lose your reservation, and that really sucks, but that's kind of part of life, I suppose. That's no different than a lot of like hotel reservations. But I work for an RV dealer, not a campground group or anything like that. But looking at the treatment that a lot of campgrounds and parks have received over the last 5 years, basically, I don't blame them. And I think it's reasonable, and I don't expect this trend to change. But I'd be kind of, I don't know, what do you think? Am I wrong about this, or is it something you're actually also kind of glad to see? And speaking of traveling, much like RV interest rates, much like my expectation of used RV market values, fuel pricing through the remainder of the summer sunshine season is currently expected to remain pretty consistent and pretty flat. Obviously, still higher than most of us would like, but at least when it's consistent, you can more effectively budget your travel expenses like that. And I haven't asked this in a while. A couple times a year, I always like to ask the question, are fuel prices affecting your travel plans? Like, are you traveling less, traveling shorter? Have you stopped traveling? Or have you basically said, hey man, I only get so many good years to go do this. I'll make more money later on. I'm gonna go out and make memories, especially with my kids right now, and it'll be what it'll be. I don't know. I'm just always kind of curious to know where the current mindset lies on that. And speaking of places to go, the Dyrt, who really specializes in RV park campsite style like reviews, has recently basically done the work for us. They have kind of broken the country up into 6 different regions and named what they feel is their top 10 best places to go camping by region in the United States. Now, I've left you 6 different links to check out what their different top results are down in the video description. And the reason I want to do this is I've talked to so many people who have, we just recently had our grand opening of our Calera, Alabama store that I was at 2 days before I recorded this. And the number of people have said, man, I used to watch you back in the Haylett RV days. People have been watching this and waiting and researching and picking out an RV for 5+ years. It's amazing how many times these people spend all this time picking the camper, and then they look at you and go, now, do you know where I could take this thing? So I thought, if you're new to this or you're looking for something new, these are 60 places in total that apparently impressed a group that does nothing but review campgrounds, campsites, and all that stuff all day, every day. It's got to be something to them. Might be worth checking out. And seems like Harvest Host has been in the world of RV happenings a lot lately here. They have recently integrated some of their platform digital content kind of stuff with RV Trader, which is essentially, it's the auto trader of the RV world, essentially. Now they're 2 separate companies, but what this is allowing to have happen here is Harvest Host members are now more easily able to broadcast an RV that they may have to the largest RV purchasing audience that exists currently on the planet Earth. And the people shopping on RV Trader now have an easier way to find their way to Harvest Host, which is currently seeing a record number of inquiries and applicants and all that kind of stuff. So evidently that's working. But an interesting thing that also came out of this little integration is there's this little blurb I noticed that said peer-to-peer sales, meaning private owner sales, is up 111% over this last year, which I think is absolutely based on the trade values conversation. There's a lot of people that go, man, I just can't let it go and trade for that. And they'll end up selling it themselves privately and then re-entering the RV market without a trade, which is going to cause used RV supplies to dwindle a little bit, which may cause your available trade value to go up. So again, it's interesting, all the knee bone to leg bone factors that are involved here. I really do feel in the next year or two, you're going to see the used RV market really be the solid core of the industry, with new sales almost just supporting that for a little bit. New RV sales is probably always going to be the volume dominant monster at RV dealerships, but I think used RV sales are going to be the things that keep the lights on for a little while. And I don't normally like to end on a somber note, but in a very unfortunate happening, a woman in Texas at a campground recently lost her life after a brain-eating amoeba from the campground water got her. Now the thing is, this was probably completely avoidable. And when you read a story or hear a headline like that, it really sounds like, oh man, campgrounds might be a dangerous place to drink the water. What happened here is this individual had, I believe, some sort of sinus thing going on, and they decided to flush their sinuses, like sort of like a neti pot, if you're familiar with that, or the lavage treatment. And when you do that, you absolutely need to use like distilled, purified water, like boiled water, purified water, because your body, your nasal cavities, my mom's a family nurse practitioner, which is the step before PhD doctor, so I grew up learning about all this crap for some reason. I'm a walking weird trivia base, but your body's nasal cavities have essentially no natural ability to fight off foreign bacteria, which is why you have to use purified clean water if you're going to use that to flush your sinuses. So it doesn't matter if you're camping. This could have happened from the tap water at her house. You're thinking, yeah, but this had some kind of brain-eating amoeba. This was water that was tested before and after, totally safe to drink. Consuming water, drinking it, goes through a very different series of bodily filters and protections. Like we're just, our bodies aren't made to snort water. That's why we breathe air. And if you're going to do that, I'm not saying don't ever flush your sinuses. I'm saying please do it correctly, because this is a really sad tragedy that could have been avoided. And on that super sad note, thanks for tuning in again, everybody. If you appreciate what we're doing here for you, doing our best to keep you in loop on what's going on now and what might be happening down the line, drop a little subscribe on the button there if you haven't before, and know that we're going to continue to do the best we can for you. And understand a lot of what we shared today, not exactly the kind of stuff that makes you feel like, boy, I sure want to go buy a camper right now. And we're a place that makes a living on selling RVs. Our goal is not to just get you to buy one, but to earn your business when you are ready. And we feel that we need to put our foot forward first so that you know we're genuine and sincere about that. So if you appreciate what we're doing, join us next time. And until then, take care, stay safe, have fun, and happy camping, everyone.